You know, there are some names in history that just echo. They stand for something huge. And Yang Guifei, hers is one of them. For over 1,000 years, she's been this incredible symbol of beauty, love, but also total tragedy. We know her as one of the four great beauties of ancient China, a woman whose life is basically a legend. But what's the real story? Who was the woman behind the myth?
I mean, just listen to that line. A turn of the head, a smile, the six palaces powdered ladies lose their color. Wow. That one line, right there, basically cemented her reputation forever. But, and this is a big but, her story is so much more than just being beautiful. She was this incredibly talented artist, a passionate lover, and in the end, yeah, she became the scapegoat when an entire dynasty started to crumble.
Okay, so to really get a grip on her story, we've got to start with the legend itself. I'm talking about the mythos that grew around her, something so powerful it's been fascinating people for literally centuries.
So they called her the flower-shaming beauty, and there's this great little story behind it. It's known in Chinese as Yuhuan shames the flowers. The legend says that she was walking in the garden, and when she just touched a flower, its petals and leaves curled up, like they were bowing their heads in shame, unable to compete with her beauty. It's an incredible image, right? Almost supernatural. But again, you have to ask, who was the actual person behind these amazing stories?
All right, let's peel back the layers of the legend, because here's something crucial. Before she ever became an imperial consort, she was already famous as a seriously accomplished artist. And if you look at her early life, it seems, well, pretty normal for a noblewoman of the time. You know, she's born into a good family, gets a top-notch education, and then makes a great marriage to a prince. It all seems very by the book, but this very conventional start is what makes the rest of her life so incredibly dramatic and, well, unconventional.
And this is so important to remember. Her talent was her first claim to fame. This wasn't just about her looks. She was a master musician, an incredible dancer, a real cultural force. She wasn't just some passive beauty waiting to be discovered. She was a performer, and it was this shared love for the arts that would forge this incredibly powerful bond with the emperor.
So, everything is going along this path, and then, boom, her life takes a massive turn. She enters the orbit of the most powerful man in all of China, Emperor Xuanzong, who just so happens to be her father-in-law.
Now, the way this happened was pretty wild. I mean, the emperor went to some extraordinary and frankly scandalous lengths to be with her. Think about it. He's taking his own son's wife. To get around this massive social taboo, he comes up with this plan. He has her become a Taoist nun for 5 years. It's like this bizarre cooling-off period before he can officially, properly bring her into his own palace. Just incredible.
And he was completely, utterly obsessed with her. Get this, he was 60 years old when she became his consort at just 26. He called her his precious treasure, and he didn't just shower her with gifts and titles. Oh no, that favor extended to her entire family.
And just like that, with the emperor's backing, the Yang family basically became the most powerful clan in the empire. We're talking overnight success. They had insane amounts of wealth, political power, and they were living these incredibly luxurious lives. But as you can probably guess, when one family rises that fast, it creates a ton of resentment and jealousy. And not just in the court, but all across the country.
Okay, here's a perfect example of his devotion. Yang Guifei loved lychees, right? But they spoil super fast. So what does the emperor do? He sets up a special pony express, a relay of horses, just to rush fresh lychees thousands of miles to the capital for her. This one thing inspired a super famous line of poetry. From a single horse kicking up red dust, the consort smiles. It perfectly sums up their story, doesn't it? For some, it's the peak of romance. For others, it's a symbol of just jaw-dropping waste and extravagance. But this whole golden age of love and art and power, it was all built on really shaky ground. All that resentment that was simmering under the surface, it was about to boil over. The emperor was so focused on her, he was neglecting his duties, and her family's power was just too much. It was a recipe for disaster, and it was about to explode into open rebellion.
And that disaster was the An Lushan Rebellion. I mean, this was one of the most devastating conflicts in all of Chinese history. It just plunged the Tang dynasty, which had been so prosperous, into total and complete chaos. The emperor, Yang Guifei, the whole court, they had to flee the capital. They were literally running for their lives.
So as they're escaping, they get to this remote outpost, and the emperor's own guards, they mutiny. They've had enough. They blame the entire mess on the Yang family.
So they find her cousin, the prime minister, and they execute him right there. But that wasn't enough to calm them down. Their anger was still boiling, and they surrounded the emperor's tent.
And then they gave the emperor an ultimatum. It was terrifying. They said, "We are not moving. We will not protect you. We won't march another step until Yang Guifei is dead." In their eyes, she was the root of all the problems.
So what could he do? He was trapped. He was powerless. And let's be real, he was desperate to save his own skin. So he gave in, and young Guifei died. She was only 37. Now, how exactly she died is still up for debate. The official story is that she was strangled, but other stories, other poems, suggest something more violent. And there's even a wild legend that she escaped to Japan. So just like her life, her death is this mix of hard fact and enduring myth.
But here's the thing. Her death wasn't the end of her story. Not even close. In fact, her tragic life became this incredibly powerful muse for artists, and that legacy has lasted for more than 1,000 years.
And what's so amazing is that we can actually hear from her directly. This poem, she wrote it. It gives us this incredible glimpse into her artistic soul, her eye for beauty. It's such a powerful reminder that she wasn't just a passive figure in someone else's story. She was a creator, an artist in her own right.
Her story, this tragic romance, it became one of the biggest inspirations in all of Chinese culture. Seriously, for centuries, poets, painters, playwrights, they've all come back to her life to talk about big ideas, love, loss, the price of beauty, what happens when a government rots from the inside. She stopped being just a person in a history book. She became an archetype, a symbol.
And I think that's why her story still gets to us today, right? It's just a deeply human drama, but it's played out on this huge imperial stage. It makes you think about those timeless questions, like where does personal love end and public responsibility begin? And, maybe most importantly, who ends up paying the ultimate price for the mistakes made by people in power? So in the end, that's the question that hangs over her whole story. Was she the cause of a dynasty's downfall? A manipulative woman who brought an empire to its knees? Or was she its most famous victim, a brilliant artist who just got caught between one man's obsession and an empire that was already falling apart? The real answer, of course, is probably somewhere in the middle. And that complexity is exactly what makes her one of the most tragic and most fascinating figures in history.